For today's video, it's going to be all about stovetop covers. If you enjoy it, like and subscribe. Let's hop on in. For this project, I have some 1x4s and then some 1x6s of the pine variety. There's honestly probably about a million videos doing stovetop covers, but hopefully with mine you learn a little something extra. I'm going to explain the steps as we go, little tips and tricks I've learned along the way. Right now, I'm just going to cut these down to a little more manageable size. I think most of these, top of my head, are probably around 22 inches in depth, and then about 29 to 32 inches wide for the stove tops. I'm going to cut every 32 inches. To make this process go a little quicker, I'm going to double up the boards, cut them at the same time. The old Larry Hahn trick is to make this parallel with the end of the board so you get a straight cut without having to use your straight edge. I was actually asked by my sister to build her one of these, but I know this type of thing sells like hotcakes, so I'm going to build a couple extra. If you're trying to get your business off the ground, start selling some stuff, this is the perfect item. With that being said, to make money, you have to make up for time. If you are building one of these, build 5 of them. Make all your cuts at the same time, bring it all through at the exact same time, so you can have 5 for almost the same time it'll take to do 1. When choosing your lumber, obviously you're looking for straight ones, but for this build specifically too, make sure you're finding ones that don't have very many knots. That's kind of key. Unless you plan to paint some of these, which is perfect, you could definitely paint these. But if you plan on staining and finishing them, try to get ones with less knots. We're going to be doing a glue up with some of these boards, specifically the 1x6s. So if you don't have a jointer, which a lot of us don't, I do now, but I'm going to throw it back for this build and use my old jointing sled, which you can find 1,000 different ways to build one of these. The whole point and purpose of this is that it's not following along on your fence, because the fence is just going to make it cut a mirror image of what you already have on this side. So if it's bowed this side, then boom, you're going to have a bow on that side. This just allows it to be cut at the same angle that this plywood is, which the plywood is straight. That'll give us one straight edge, so then we can flip it over, and then you can use your fence, and it'll mirror that straight edge. Now that has given us a perfectly straight edge, just as a jointer would. Once you have one straight edge, then you can put it against your fence, run it across, and we'll do this for all the 1x6s. This is where you pick the width of what your 1x6 will be. I know the one my sister wants is going to be 21 inches in depth. Now it does depend on the style that you end up going with. There's 2 types that we'll build here, where you will end up having a backer on it, and then one type where you won't. Figure out what you're going to do, then you'll know what to cut this at. But I will say, you always want to make sure to be short. You can be short, but you don't want to be over, because if you're over, you're going to run into the stove where it starts curving up. Thing won't sit right. If you're a little bit short, nobody will know. It'll just hang off or come off the back of the stove that much, but nobody's seeing that. With that, let's finally get this done. A quick test fit before we go too far. I mean, that's honestly nearly perfect. Here, let me turn it around. It's got a little lip on it, which we'll sand down later. But that's all you're seeing. Other than that, the actual crack is pretty well perfect. Honestly, when it comes to building something like this, you want them to be pretty well jointed, but it does not need to be perfect. For something like this, it does not need to be. And especially for you as the woodworker trying to make sales, do not lose your mind over if there is one little gap or something. Obviously, too big's not good. Just don't go crazy. Now you are through what I would consider the worst part of the build, is just getting the wood ready to even be built with. So now that we've got them, go ahead and lay out however many you cut and just start piecing it together. This is actually a really fun part. is start piecing together the grain to see exactly how you want it all to look. Spend a little bit of time here and get the exact look you're wanting, but I always cut at least one extra piece just because not always these are going to join up perfectly. Usually one extra spare piece can fit in that spot. I like to go ahead and mark whichever side is going to be my top now that I've decided. And then sometimes for the join up, so we just don't forget, you do 1 1. You want to make sure there's an orientation on the 1, 2 2, 3 3. Let's go ahead and grab our Craig jig. I have the Craig, I think it's 720 jig. But one thing I got for this that's been a life changer is it does come with this dust collection to go into here, but it doesn't come with the attachment to your shop vac or dust collector, and it's like an inch hole or something. I don't know what in the world that's supposed to fit on, but I did get these dust rights, and they're on all of my stuff, all my sanders and things, and I got the bigger dust right for the actual 4-inch dust collection. This little guy is perfect if you have the dust right hose for your regular shop vac, clicks right on in. Here's that dust right hose I was talking about that connects right on in here. Just as simple as that. Now, I will say about this, when you do turn your shop vac on, this thing pulls tight. So especially when you're sanding, it can kind of be yanking on you. I do believe Dust Right now has one that's a little more like the Festool hose, where it won't actually shrink up when you turn the shop vac on. Honestly, haven't had enough issue to want to upgrade to that, but just something to know if you guys are looking at this. With these stoppers, when I first got this jig, it always confused me on where you're supposed to put it at. But what you're supposed to set it at is the actual width of your board. So ours are 3/4 inch because they're 1/bys. I'm going to set this at 3/4. Let's go ahead and turn these over so we can do our Craig pocket holes. Make sure to keep them in your correct orientation. And then we'll start going over what the actual difference will be between these two, because it all starts with the pocket holes. This stovetop cover style will actually be with the 1x4s like this on both sides. So this will really be the structure of it. So I'm not too worried about putting any wood glue in with these Craig screws. Just need to know where to put them. 1 in the middle, pull it together. 2 on the sides, pull the sides together. Simple as that. We'll stick with simple as that. We'll stick with 3. Make sure, since we have not cut these down to its final length, that you don't bring these out too far. We'll actually rip both edges after we get them put together. I know I said it, but I just really want to point it out. I'm not going to be putting wood glue between these joints. Now you can. Once you start adding glue, those joints will make it stronger. Yes, but you need to plus or minus. Is it worth it? Do you need that extra strength, or are the other pieces you're putting on going to add the strength? And then you got to think about after, when the glue dries, you're going to have to clean or sand all those joints down, and that's going to add an extra, probably honestly, an hour, and it can also cause some waves in your boards. So keep it simple on yourself, especially with a project like this. No need to go overboard. These little micro jig things are perfect. That's what I used on that jointing jig. And then I also have these holes in my table that this sits right in. Allows me to clamp things straight to the table. It's going to help with shooting these Craig screws, which you'll see. But getting a pair of these, honestly, has been a game changer for almost any project I'm doing. Anybody who shot Craig pocket holes before, it can be kind of a nightmare. 1, to keep your workpiece from moving around. 2, to keep your workpiece even with the other one. And then 3, to keep it on the same line so that one doesn't shift this way or that. With these micro jigs in the little slots I have on my table, I can clamp down right on the joint so we know it's perfectly flush. We know it's perfectly flush here, and then it's not going to go anywhere. For 3/4 inch wood being your 1/bys, you're usually able to shoot a 1 1/4. You use coarse thread. Craig screws, you definitely don't want to overdrive them. It'll rip it out. So give it a couple taps of it being seated, and then you're good to go. Some of these harder to reach spots, you can see this one's got a lip on it, so it needs clamped. I got this bigger, I don't know if this is Craig brand or not. It's like called Dragonite. I don't know, must have been from Amazon. But I'll use this to be able to reach those harder spots. I did run to on this panel that this middle shot right here definitely has a lip on it, and none of my clamps will reach the middle to really push that down. So you just have to get creative. Second panel, also done. We're going to cut this down to the right width, which for this will be 30 inches. I'm just going to use this miter gauge that came with, have it set right at 0. You could also use a crosscut sled, same concept, same idea. Mine's just a little bit small, but I do have a build for this on my channel. If you want to search my page, you can make it a little bigger. A lot of woodworkers have a small one and a big one. I just haven't gotten around to making a big one yet. I'm using this fence to find my 30 inches. I've got it set. Now I am going to unlock and then back it off so I don't get a bind with this board going through the table saw. I'm going to go ahead and start sanding. I'm going to hit it with 120 grit, both of these panels. I won't make you watch it, so we'll skip past it. Sanding done. This one, like I said, we have two styles coming here. We'll leave this one off to the side for a little bit and come back to it. I would consider the second one to be a little bit more of the fancier, a little bit different than what most people do. This one we're going to do probably the one you see the most throughout the internet, which will be with these on each end. Then we'll end up putting a handle on it. One thing that's going to be different is not only are we going to have these on top, we will also have them running along the bottom. What you may hear from some of your customers or somebody thinking about buying them is they're kind of nervous about putting these on their stovetop. If they put it on their hot or something, they don't want to catch on fire. It makes them nervous for it sitting on their actual burners. With one underneath, it will actually hold it up off the burners. And I'm not going to line up this far edge. I'm just going to also score both sides because this probably isn't cut straight on either side. So you want to just line up the outside and then make 2 cuts right out here. For wood glue, the wood actually has to be pressurized to do its actual adhering process. That's when you get a weak glue up, is if it's not pressurized enough. So I'm going to use some pin nails. If it's not going to hold it well enough, then I will throw a clamp on. We'll see. There we go. Some added pressure just to make sure this holds. I just took the clamps off of this one. It's got a couple more steps before we get to the finishing process. But we're going to go ahead and get this one to catch up to it. We're going to cut the side handles and the back plate, and I'll show you how I do that. Now that I've got my 2 ends marked, I want to find the middle. We're at 20, so middle is just, doesn't have to be the world's most perfect. But our middle is just about there. 10 inches, 10 inches. I just want to know that because if this is the front, I want the handle to be just behind the middle. So when they go pick it up, the weight distribution will be correct. I changed my mind a couple of times, but you'll understand it when I cut it out. To cut this out, I'm going to tape 2 boards together. Obviously, far easier to cut it once and have it cut on both boards and trying to cut one and then mirror it on the other. You could definitely use a jigsaw. I'm sure a lot of you guys have jigsaws. Maybe not all of you have a bandsaw, but I am going to use a bandsaw because it is a billion times easier. While you still have this taped together, we're going to go ahead and drill the holes for the handle. It's easiest by far to use Forstner bit, where you'll do one plunge, and then we'll go back to the jigsaw and connect it. The way I like to mark this up is I'll eyeball it. Here, let's turn the light on. I'll eyeball where I want the start of the handle to be. You like it usually be somewhere around this curve, trying to get it towards the middle. So when somebody picks it up, they're picking it up from the middle. So whenever I decide on my spot, I just like to push it in there so I can get the mark from the tip. And then I'll use a combination square. I mean, you could very well use almost anything as long as you can get it, keep it even. So there's that spot. Just like to draw a straight line with it. Now we got a straight line drawn, so you'll be able to make your first cut, and then you can come down to the other end and you'll know where the middle is to be able to make your second cut. Use this sanding cylinder here to clean up everything inside. If you don't have a drill press, no big deal. This attaches to your impact, so you can. It's just a little bit more manual. These are cut. I quickly sanded around the edging here, just while they're still taped together. But now we'll go ahead and use a 1/4 inch router round over bit, and we'll go along this. People have all kinds of strategies for which way you're going to push your router on your work pieces, but you always forget those tips by the time you get to your project. So I'll just look down in here and I'll see my blade, and the blade is pointing that way. So I know it's rotating that way, and I know I want to push towards the rotation. So I want it on this side going that way. Handles are looking great. So now we're moving on to our base, and we just got to put the last final Craig pocket holes in there that we skipped because we hadn't cut it down to the size yet. I just want 2 on each side to be able to screw into these. Before we actually start attaching these handles, go ahead and clean up some of your edges. Usually when we cut it down the table saw, it's got a little bit of tear out that you need to sand down. A bead of glue, go and place it here for a clamp. You can use a board across the front if you want to just check for your evenness. There we go. Got our 2 clamps in place. You're just checking, making sure you've closed the whole gap along the insides here. Your front is even, and then we can go ahead and measure to get our board cut for the back plate. The front and back should be square, so it shouldn't matter which side we measured this backboard from. I like to cut the ends off of both, so I want to make a mark on each side. And good practice is to always cut on one side of the line. I just draw a little arrow, reminding myself when we get up there that I drew this line to be cut on the outside of it. I did leave it just a hair long on this side. This one I cut pretty dang just outside the line perfectly. So I left this one a little bit long, because I can always sand it down just a hair to get it to fit in there, but I didn't want to be short. Now we've got everything where it's supposed to be. We go ahead and shoot our 1¼ inch pocket screws. You'll see maybe not all these boards meet flush with the sidewalls. It's totally fine because we know our base is perfectly flat because we flattened it to the perfectly flat plywood. So you should honestly have a little bit of this, and that's just what makes it flat. Now we've got the crank screws in there, so the clamps should be fine to come off. But sometimes I do like to make sure they are holding on there for about 20 minutes just to allow everything to tack up and seal together before we relieve the pressure. Now we'll go ahead and hit our 1/4 inch router across the top of the back. We'll do a little spot sanding dowel rod with some sandpaper wrapped around it. It's perfect to get some of those spots. I've just got my hand sander here just so I can clean up anywhere I may see that we missed. To attach the handle, you first have two options in handles. Ones that screw in from the top, ones that screw in from the bottom. Ones that screw in from the bottom are usually a little bit nicer, but they do take more time to install. The ones that screw down from the top, you just want to make sure when you buy it that you're going to buy one made of some type of metal, aluminum. There's a lot of plastic ones out there and they feel super cheap when a person goes to pick this up, so you don't want that. Just make sure to get a metal of some sort. Measure the handle. We're at 5 3/4. Go ahead and measure. And then you're at 20 inches here. So 20 inches minus the 5 3/4 divided in half is just a hair over 7. So we know we need 7 inches, 7 inches, and that'll find the center of our handle going that way. And then for the sides here, 3.5. So the middle of that would be 1.75. My stove is the perfect example on why putting these boards underneath are so vital, because when you get a stove like this, it's the only way it's going to sit flat is if you have that raising it off.